Jackal fans. Welcome to the Jackals Coaches Show. Jared Abbott alongside Jackals bench boss Jamie Russell. Jamie, 3 games this weekend for your squad. On Wednesday, you were in Reading, and then Friday and Saturday, you hosted the Evansville Icemen for the final 2 times at First Arena. But first, you're 11-5-3 on the season, tied for first place in the East Division, right up there in 4th place in the conference right now, but with games the way they are, right in the mix for that top spot. And this is your first professional year as a head coach. What's the adjustment been like? And what is, I guess, is there been a key to the success in your coaching, how you've been able to work with your young players? Or, is it just kind of the way that the cards have fallen at this point?
Well, I think we've had some early success, and a big part of that was the groundwork and the foundation that we laid in the offseason in terms of for all intents and purposes, we rebuilt this entire roster, top to bottom, from goaltending to defense to the forwards. And some of the things that we looked for in the offseason was character, leadership. A good number of the guys on our roster are players that have been leaders in the past, that have been captains, that have been assistant captains. Our leadership's been fantastic with Matt Tassoni, Nick Tuzzolino, and Andrew Conboy. But a lot of the younger guys, we have a lot of first-year pros. They're not young in terms of calendar age by their birth date. They've played a lot of hockey, but they do have a lot of experience. Those guys have also been leaders, and sometimes when you've been a leader, you understand what it's like for Matt and Nick and Andrew. So those guys have been great followers. The guys have come to the rink every single day. They've competed hard. They've worked hard. We've got off to a good start. We've done a good job protecting home ice and having a good record in First Arena. And now we're going to get tested here as we head on the road for some road trips.
What about personally? What's the adjustment been like going from the college game to the professional game? I know a lot of your players are young in this league. As you mentioned, not necessarily calendar year, but they're still young players in this league, and a lot of them have college experience. So I don't know if that overlap has helped with your just adjustment to the pro level on a personal side, not necessarily the team overall.
Well, it's been an adjustment. It's been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed it. Some of the things that are different certainly is the schedule and the travel that we compete with, the travel that we deal with week in, week out, where you're playing 3 games a lot of times in 2.5 days. So that's been an adjustment. The amount of practice time that we have has been an adjustment. And probably the biggest change is the number of different faces and different personalities that you're dealing with. In the college setting, your roster is set in the fall, and that's your roster for the year. There's nobody coming and going. So that has its advantages in terms of teaching. You're following up with the same players over and over. In the pro game, especially at the ECHL level, people are coming and going. Your roster can change hour to hour. So a lot of times your teaching is done one-on-one, just with a board kind of explaining what your systems are. And the players have been great in adapting to my coaching style and what we're looking for as an identity of our organization. And so far it's been a lot of fun. It's a great group to work with. The guys are fantastic. And we're off to a good start, and we want to continue to keep building and growing as the year continues.
I feel pretty good. The team's obviously been pretty successful to this point. I'm kind of the new guy here, just trying to come in and work hard and kind of try and help the winning culture that they've established so far this season. Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoy Elmira. I played with the Jackals 2 years ago, so it's kind of a little bit of home cooking. It's nice to be back, and I'm fairly familiar with the area. So yeah, it's nice to have that experience 2 years ago and now, and I've always enjoyed Elmira, so it's good to be back.
You mentioned the leadership of Matt Tassoni and Nick Tuzzolino and Andrew Conboy. Matt Tassoni, as pretty much an extension of the coaching staff with the players, returned to action on Wednesday in Reading and returned in a big way, had a goal and an assist and a shootout goal. Team did earn their first shootout win of the year too, and the 4th attempt. So what was it like to get Matt back in the lineup and to have him out there with the guys and producing also? He's been off, and talking to him, he said this is the best start of his career, and then he was derailed a little bit with the injury that kept him out for a couple games, but he picked up right where he left off. So what have you seen from him, and especially returning, that seems to just click for him this year?
Well, Matt's a glue guy. He keeps the room together. He's got a great personality. He understands what buttons to push with guys when they need an arm around them, and a good word of advice from a guy that's got a lot of experience. He understands when a younger guy needs a kick in the butt as well. So you're exactly right when you say he's an extension of the coaching staff. And to get him back on the bench playing, he's a big leader by example with his work ethic, his compete level, his poise with the puck, his decisions game in. A lot of the pro game is game management, understanding different situations, when to make a play and when to chip pucks and get up behind defensemen's heels. So to get him back and really picking up right where he left off. He had such a tremendous start to this season in terms of his point production in goals and assists, and being a guy that plays in key situations. It really gives us a big boost in specialty teams because he's such a good penalty killer. He's really good at face-offs. He keys our power play. So getting him back, anytime a player has an injury, there's always a little bit of a question mark in the back of his head. How's it going to be? Am I going to be 100%? Is my timing off? So to him get right back in the saddle and have a goal and an assist in his first game back was a real lift, I think, for him mentally and with his confidence coming off of injury. And then, of course, a great big boost to our team as well.
And he had the first goal on Friday in the team's victory against Evansville. Also on Friday, you saw a lot of fluctuation with the roster. You had Kevin Sunder, Brady Austin, and you also had Justin Kia return to your team. So those 3 players come down to play on Friday. Sunder, Austin, and McPherson go up on Saturday before the weekend finale. What was it like getting the players down, first of all, and utilizing those 3? Obviously, you haven't had Austin yet down here, and Sunder was down here just for one preseason game. You know Justin from playing down here. But what was it like to have them in the lineup and kind of mix and match? And then what was the difference on Saturday having to just completely change the lineup that you had a night before?
It was a great boost for us on Friday. Obviously, getting Austin on the back end. He's a big man. He plays heavy in his own end. He defends very well. He moves the puck. He keeps it simple. It was my first experience in working with him from a coaching standpoint. I'd seen him play in Traverse City. I'd seen him play in training camp in Rochester, so I had some exposure that way. But it was a nice boost to get a big body like that on the back end. Kevin Sunder was a really good match with Alan McPherson because they both play at such a high pace of the game. They skate very well. They play fast, essentially, which really backs people off, puts defensemen on their heels. So it was a big boost for us from that standpoint. Justin Kia is a guy that I thought made really good strides when he was down here. You have a young player that's under contract coming out of the OHL. You want that player to develop, take steps and strides in his game, and I think he was definitely able to do that. Got a taste of the American League during the regular season, came back down, and again, he's a big man. He's 6'5". He's hard to play against. So getting those guys on Friday night was critical for us, especially because we're banged up with Matt coming off of injury, questionable whether he was at 100%. Andrew Conboy out of the lineup, Lucas Bludoff out of the lineup. So those injuries start to take its toll. So to get that shot in the arm with fresh legs coming in was great on Friday. Saturday was a big adjustment. We lost Alan McPherson, Kevin and Brady went up as well with Alan. Alan's a player that as I mentioned earlier, he plays at such a high pace, a high tempo. You could say his motor runs very fast, and that's important in today's game of hockey, to play fast, and it's something that we've stressed as a staff and as an organization of how we want to play. We want to move our feet, we want to push the pace. And losing Alan really changed that aspect of it. So that was one side of it. The other side of it is specialty teams. Allen's a guy that penalty kills a lot. Our power play that has got off to a very good start here this year, I believe was 6th in the league going into the weekend. The one unit runs through Allen's hands on a half wall is a left-hand shot. So we don't have a ton of left-hand shots with Bludoff out, Conboy out. Most of our forwards are right-handed. So we had to reconfigure everything for our power play, and that showed up. We had an opportunity to get back in the game on Saturday with a lot of man advantage opportunities, a 4-on-3, segued into a 5-on-3 as well, and we had to really do different things that we hadn't worked on in practice. Basically, you're taking the board out and you're showing the guys, and let's go out and execute it. The other part of it, as well as we lost Nick Tuzzolino to a second altercation in the game. He got a game misconduct, and he's got the big cannon, the gun on the back end for the power play. So you lose that shot, and it really changes what you're trying to do on the power play.
My father never played hockey, no. I actually started out taking figure skating lessons, and it turned into hockey. But I have a twin brother who also plays in ECHL. He's out in Fort Wayne, and I have a younger brother who plays high school hockey back in my hometown of Suffern. Yeah, I mean, everybody has their own take on it, but for me, I think it's extremely important. You know, it kind of keeps guys in check. You know, you don't want, the last thing you want to do, it's a fast physical game. The last thing you want to do is have guys take runs at your teammates or things like that. So I think being able to enforce, it basically enforces safety. I know most people probably, that doesn't make sense, but overall I think it makes it a safer game when people know that if you take a liberty at somebody, there's going to be an answer for it. So.
Jamie, we were talking about the team last weekend before we went to our last break here. Been some changes, not just with players going up to the American League as we had discussed earlier on, but also had a trade go through yesterday, moving the only full-time player from the Jackals last season as they continued the whole revamp of the roster in defenseman Patch Alber. He was moved to Missouri in exchange for forward Kellen Totchkin. Kellen seems to have that Alan McPherson type role. Obviously, losing Alan to Rochester for the time being may have swayed a decision, but talk a little bit about that trade and why you went that route.
Well, I think if you're going to be successful at the ECHL level, you've got to be able to plug the holes and plug the gaps. There's so much movement. We've had a lot of injuries that we've talked about, but with Alan McPherson going up to Rochester, Rochester's a little bit banged up right now, so we don't expect Alan to come back for this weekend. It could be even longer in terms of the duration of his stay up in the American League. So on the one note, I'm really happy for Alan. He gets that opportunity. He's earned that through his play. He's been very successful at our level. But at the same time, it creates a hole in our lineup. We need a top 6 guy. We need some speed. We need some skill. Anytime you try and address those things is difficult to do in free agency where you look what's available out there. And a lot of times when you make a trade, to get something good, you've got to give something good up. And, you know, Patch is a guy that had a lot of success here last year. He's been great in the community. He's a very good person. So it was a difficult trade to pull the trigger on, but it was one that I felt was certainly in the best interest of our organization and gives us the best chance to be successful on the ice. So we're excited to get Kellen Totchkin in. He's traveling en route from Missouri here, and hopefully can get a couple days of practice and insert him in the lineup, and would like to see him have some early chemistry and success getting some points on the board for us.
And where do you see Kellen fitting in when you look at your line depth chart right now?
Well, I want to give him an opportunity. He's a top 6 guy. He's got some skill. He's been a producer at this level before. So to play him with some players that are offensive producers themselves, I think he would be a real good match with a Mike Seidel. So we'll probably, a lot of times as a coach, I like to have pairs. A lot of times when you have 10 forwards, you're mixing and matching an awful lot as the game's going on. So I try and keep pairs together and rotate players through. So we'll see what kind of chemistry he has with guys in practice. And then I'll probably rotate people in and out of the lineup because of our schedule. When we have 6 games in 7 days, our off day, we're flying to Florida. So we've got travel, we've got a lot of hockey in a very short span. So regardless of how guys play, I'm going to be shuttling guys in and out of the lineup so we're fresh.
Yeah, certainly need fresh legs when you're playing pretty much a baseball schedule with a hockey team. Very different sport and physicality, so to play that many games and to travel on your one off day, and it's it's not like you're heading down the road to Reading either. I know it's a flight, so it's easier than busing it down to Florida, but still nonetheless, it is going to be a taxing a couple of weeks to say the least for your squad. Looking ahead to this weekend with Patch on his way to Missouri, he was the last player that was in the lineup last March. So, I mean, not even, when you look, March 2nd of this past year was the last time that the Jackals played South Carolina, and not one player from the Jackals team is back. And this isn't a team that you play a lot in South Carolina. So 2 new and very unfamiliar opponents in their lone meeting, despite being division rivals this year. How big is this matchup on Friday? And is it difficult when you only play a division rival one time in a season?
It's a huge weekend for us. Actually, these 6 games are very big because 5 of the 6 games are against division opponents. And the way the schedule works this year in the ECHL, it's pretty quirky from the standpoint that we play Wheeling 13 times. They're not in our division. We play South Carolina once, and they are in our division. So 4 of the teams are going to make the playoffs. So whenever you're playing a divisional opponent, we talk about this in the room an awful lot with the team. Divisional games take on added importance because not only do you have the opportunity to gain 2 points for yourself in the standings, you're taking 2 points away from your opponent that you're directly competing with a playoff spot for. So it is big. I've watched videotape on South Carolina. I think they're an extremely well-coached team. There's no question they're successful year in, year out for a reason. Their coaching staff does a terrific job. Their systems are quite similar to what we do. So on one sense, every day in practice, we're seeing a lot of the same things. So it's going to be a challenge here with them coming into our building. Toledo on Saturday night, they're off on Friday. So they're going to be in Elmira watching the game where we're playing back-to-back. So those 2 games become important. We have Wichita on Sunday and then the long trip to Florida and playing 3-3 down there. Again, Orlando's been really hot as of late, and Florida always has a good team.
I mean, obviously the team's been pretty successful this far. I think we've generated a lot of scoring chances. I think we can just bear down on some pucks. I think it's just a little bit of puck luck, but I think we need to keep finding the cage and being able to bury some pucks and hopefully go from there. I would say my hometown's probably, it's kind of on the cusp of upstate, downstate. Not too much going on. It's not the biggest town, but I wouldn't call it a small town, but a good town. I mean, I've always enjoyed living there. It's the high school hockey there. The community really gets behind the hockey team there, so that's cool. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. There's not too much to say about Suffern. Not too much going on over there, so.
You have Orlando on Tuesday, Florida on Wednesday, and then Orlando again on Thursday. How do you plan to structure the travel down there to make sure your guys are as fresh as possible when you don't have 2 games in a row in the same location? So there's constant changing.
Yeah, and that brings up a great point. You know, we've gone back and forth of what's the best way to do things, and to simplify it, we're going to be based out of Orlando. We'll fly in there, we'll travel, we'll check into a hotel. We're going to stay in the same hotel the entire time. The day of the game in Fort Myers, we're going to bus over from Orlando, play the game. Right after the game, we'll get back on the bus, head back to Orlando. So the guys aren't constantly packing up, checking into one hotel, checking out of another. You know, it really simplifies things. It's going to be demanding. You know, that's a busy schedule in a short period of time with very important games. So as we've done all year, we'll find a way to get it done.
Not to get too far ahead of ourselves here, but when you return from Florida, then you have the weekend off, which is nice to have a Friday, Saturday, Sunday off, Friday to travel back. But it gives you a bit of a break, and you also get to do a little bit of scoreboard watching to some of the other games going on throughout the league. But then you hit the road again for a full week. So on Monday, you begin the quest out to Evansville for the final meeting against the Icemen this season, followed by 2 games against Cincinnati, the first 2 matchups against them. And then you finally get your Christmas break. So what's the message right now? I know it's about being mentally tough with the players and your team, but when you have back-to-back road trips that are week-long road trips and that take you to very different parts of the country, how do you stay in a positive mindset when you're on a bus like Evansville? That's a bear of a bus trip, certainly, and then Cincinnati and then back, and you don't know what weather conditions could be like or injuries or whatnot. So how do you kind of keep these guys in the right mindset?
Well, I think that's the first thing, is the mindset. You have to be mentally strong as a person, that there's no excuses. As we've talked about all year, and we've mentioned it here today, is find a way to win under any circumstance. And our guys have really responded to that, and we have a group that is very strong mentally. And a big part of this sport is being tough between the years and understanding that within games itself, hockey is a momentum game. Sometimes you have it, sometimes the opposition has it. When you don't have it, you need to go out and get it. And there's going to be ups and downs on this road trip. There's going to be things that go well. There's going to be meals that may be late. There may be weather that we run into. It doesn't matter. We need to adapt, and we need to overcome these things. So we've talked about things already from the standpoint of we need to hydrate, we need rest, our sleep habits need to be terrific. Guys need to take care of themselves away from the rink in preparation for a busy schedule. Prior to the Evansville-Cincinnati games, there is a little bit of a carrot at the end of the rainbow where, hey, we get a break, guys get to go home for Christmas, we'll give them 4 or 5 days off, they can regroup. They're definitely going to be banged up. There's going to be players that are sore and need some recovery time. So we need to get through it. We need to get points, and then we need to be successful and put ourselves in a good spot coming back after Christmas.
That does it for tonight's Jackals Coaches Show with yours truly, Jared Abbott, and Jackals head coach Jamie Russell. Thank you all for tuning in on WTM. Have a good night.